Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining DataCon LA 2020. Welcome to the Data Infrastructure and Security track. Soon we'll be viewing and listening to data governance for self-service BI with Jason Medina. I'm Lawrence, your host, and our co-host is Mark, who'll be moderating the chat and Q&A for you during the session, so please reach out and ask any questions. Jason's a data science affiliated with Global Decision. He's got over 20 years real-world data oversight, operationalization, and promotion access, multiple verticals transcending multi-layer leadership for action-based applications. So now I'm going to hand it over to Jason. Thanks for being here, Jason.
Thank you, Lawrence. Appreciate the intro. Hello, everybody. As stated, my name is Jason Medina. I am here today to speak to you about data governance for self-service BI and share some of my experiences over the past 20 years, as mentioned. We'll kick off with a little bit about me. For starters, today's session is intended to be interactive, so if you do have questions, please feel free to ask. We will address those questions in the flow of the presentation. I have saved time as well at the end. If there are any questions, we can certainly discuss at any point in time. But just to kick off, I studied mathematics at UC Irvine. I graduated in 2006. I was a transfer student from Saddleback Junior College, go Gauchos. At that time, which was towards the end of the 90s, I had a job working with a local coffee house here in Orange County known as Diedrich Coffee. My first data role was traveling to different coffee houses and operations to install modems to help gather and collect the information collected at the businesses, coffee houses, and send that back up to corporate for reporting. At that point in time, it was a lot of text files, a lot of CSV files, a lot of very similar things that we see today in terms of just, I will call it data hygiene. So what I quickly learned was, even though to me these were just text files, there was valuable information and insights for different pieces of the business, whether it was something like food cost or something like labor scheduling. There were people on the ground operating a business that were just looking to understand what was happening and use that understanding to then make decisions and take actions. So today, I hope you get a chance to learn from some of the things that I'm about to share. The picture on the right there was taken from Patriots Hill down in San Juan Capistrano, close to my house. This is a nice little outdoor walk. Sharing this photo because a lot of times, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. That was one of my favorite expressions. And seeing this picture kind of reminded me about that journey that we're going to take today. So next, what I'd like to do is talk about the agenda for today. We have a few different topics, and the picture to the right is something that I think will help us keep in mind on this journey of data governance and self-service BI, that people are at the center of the process. Circular reasoning works because, I'm sure you've heard that expression. If you have not, it's a very fun one. The reason why I share it is because a lot of the times I've experienced different parts of the self-service BI lifecycle. And what that means is it may start with a model, it being the self-service BI lifecycle. Someone may come to you and say, I have this number, is it right? And what they're trying to do is understand what happened. They'd like to know, maybe with a little bit more exploration, how many, how often, just different questions that are asked. So the left side of that circle there is a lot of the business side. The right side is more on the technology side. And these are the things that we do in terms of obtaining data, scrubbing data, we being the technology side of the house, to help the people on the business side. In the last 20 years, I've seen a lot of overlap. I myself have benefited. I started on the technology side and quickly worked my way into the administration side of the business because every company is a data company. Some of them figure it out sooner than others. But for the most part, every company is driven by data. To what degree? That's what's different. So here's our agenda for today, and a couple of things that I wanted to share. The reason why I like the circle is because, again, this is a very, very iterative process, as you all know. And next, I'd like to talk about the players and the roles, because all starts with people. When I first started on the business side, there was something known as a balanced scorecard, a BSC. That's kind of given ways to KPI in the last few years, but really it's the same idea. There's somebody in the business who is interested in knowing or scoring their business through key metrics and other performance indicators. So this section here is broken into two buckets, what I call administrative advocates and technology resources. I intentionally left off skills here because, again, I'd like to highlight the fact that we are all data people now. On the business side, on the technology side, data is playing a very crucial role in the world today. And I think we all feel very fortunate and blessed to be able to have an understanding of the data. And whenever somebody from the business is willing to sponsor or champion the need to drive a data project, it's a great thing. And it's a good feeling to be able to partner with somebody to deliver a meaningful work product. So on the administrative side, you really need two people, or two types of people: an executive sponsor and a business owner. These are going to be the people that on the business side are really going to be diving into the data or diving into the outcome of the data and the insights. Under the technology resources, this is where it can get a little dicey. And I'm sure many of you have sometimes feel like, well, I've done all three of these. I know I have. It's different. Every organization has different problems and really a different maturity level in their data journey. So in this case, I highlight these three types of resources because I think this is a very, very high level way of understanding that a data technician is somebody who is really there to help build out the pipelines, help understand the data that's moving. The data curator, in a lot of ways, is a sort of a translator or somebody that works back and forth between the businesses, the technicians, to keep things maintained and running smoothly. And then the data consumer is just about all of us. We're all looking at data, but just in different ways. Next, we're going to use an analogy that I've heard in the last few years that I actually like a lot. One called painting the Golden Gate Bridge. And we'll start by just talking about what the data universe looks like. So on the left here, the business deliverable is really the final work product that's being asked for. In my experience, a lot of people will come and ask for a report or they ask for a dashboard, but that's not really what they want. What they want is an answer. When somebody's asking for a report, they really want an answer. And to make that even more challenging, there's going to be additional questions and additional follow-ups. The quote on the bottom right there was taken from Gartner with the Master Data Management Solutions Survey. And I highlighted this highlighted this quote because I think it really shows how difficult it is to manage data, especially in a self-service BI world. For example, self-service BI doesn't always have the most curated or trusted data sources, which means users can get different answers and different sources of truths. We've all seen that. I also heard an analogy recently. Somebody said, I would never go and buy milk from the grocery store that did not have an expiration date. And I thought that was a very good analogy because a lot of the times we go and grab data sources and there's no timestamp in the table. We don't have an update time. We may be missing key features to help us understand the context of our data and the value of our data. In the middle there, we have enterprise reporting tools. These are more your traditional BI tools where IT is actually certified a data source and there's a true ETL pipeline or something that is much more supported in production. And then lastly, we have the spreadsheets for the spread marts and the spread heads out there. Raise your hand if you've used a spreadsheet for a data source. It happens. And that's because the business moves fast. And sometimes we need to prototype things and just make it work and then worry about scaling it later. So this is just to highlight that we are indeed in control of our data universe. So now back to painting the Golden Gate Bridge. Did you know it takes 7 years to paint the Golden Gate Bridge, and the Golden Gate Bridge is painted once every 7 years? Well, I heard that expression, and so I actually had to go to the Golden Gate Bridge website to pull out some information from the FAQs. And that's what's there on the bottom left of the slide here. So some things to know with respect to the maintenance of self-service BI and understanding how the self-service BI lifecycle is very fluid is timing. Being aware of the business priorities as well as the reporting calendars. Things like a fiscal calendar can be very, very difficult to deal with from an IT standpoint when there's something like a 53rd week, or if the fiscal calendar begins on a Tuesday and maybe not lined up with traditional reporting periods of Monday through Sunday. So understanding the timing of the business and also the criticality of the business priorities is essential to maintaining and delivering self-service BI with data governance. That third thing to know there, technology can be a 4-letter word. Sometimes as users of technology, we just learn to understand that we need to hit that refresh button or understand that it may take a few moments for a dashboard to refresh. Other people may not have that patience or that understanding, but working together, that's where we can help one another understand the importance of the timing and the criticality of those deliverables. Things like a one-stop shop or a repository to share those maintenance calendars for things like server patching, weekly reports, monthly reports, having a repository to go back and check and making it visible for others to inspect and update, because things do change and things do move. New customers are acquired, other customers may have new asks, so things are changing constantly. And of course, the reason why we're doing all of this is so that we can minimize our downtime during those critical reporting periods. Nobody likes to be pulling together reports at year end on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. We all have different things that we like to do other than pulling data at odd hours. So what I'd encourage you to do is avoid perfection at all costs. Barely sufficient is sufficient. It's going to be a challenge and it's difficult, but getting something operationalized and working in production to deliver an answer is the only thing that's needed at that point in time. Understanding how things scale and valuing reproducibility absolutely need to be kept in mind. But there's some times when you just need an answer, and having that answer sooner than later will make all the difference. And then the last thing is just boiling the ocean, trying to do too much at once. Again, it's the nature of business and things move quickly, and we all do our best and everybody understands that. Next here, this little snippet, Figures Don't Lie, Liars Figure. This was taken from a book called How to Lie with Statistics. I've often said that this should be required reading for anyone in self-service BI or just BI in general, because after a while, you start to understand that the data tells a story, and everybody can have a little different story or different interpretation sometimes. So this next slide here is to help everybody remember or keep in mind the rule of three. Shobha Nikam was somebody that I worked with during my time at Criteo, which is a online advertising company. And she was very good at working with clients. And one of the things that I think made Shobha so admirable is that she understood that she needed to get a client to really understand or commit to something. And in order to do that, she had to state it, restate it, and then state it a third time to get that true commitment. So what we're doing here is, or what I'd like to highlight here, is the importance of understanding yes. Sometimes people will just say yes as a way of moving the conversation along. In my experience, it's helpful to try and get people to, or phrase the question a little differently, and try and get somebody to answer with a no, so that way the conversation maybe reveals new things. For example, revenue can be a very tricky subject across all businesses, especially when things like net sales come into play. Where somebody's talking about revenue, are they talking gross revenue, net revenue? Are they also talking about refunds, chargebacks, maybe client credits? There are a lot of things that can go into a revenue number. So when someone says, I just need my revenue updated through October 25th, it's important to understand what that revenue really means by trying to drill into the detail. In my experience, moving past the negativity is sometimes a challenge, especially when you're trying to get somebody to commit to something that is maybe not exactly agreeable or difficult to understand. Say I have a process that takes 3 hours to update, and in order for that process to update, I need to ingest a file that starts, or I need to ingest a file to start that 3-hour process. If I'm dependent on that file to kick off my process, it's important that I have a clear path or an understanding to where that file is coming from, and really how I can minimize my time to failure. Because so often what will happen is you may have a process and you have a team of people working on that process, and everybody thinks they're focused on delivering a revenue number, for example. But if it takes you a full day to try and understand if you really did deliver the right revenue number, that's going to take a little bit more time to try and resolve than if you were to get, say, be able to fail within half a day or 3 hours. So trying to minimize that time to failure is very important. Likewise, the ambiguity from pronoun confusion can be very problematic, because people will say they, them, and trying to understand the actual business line or the, say, schema or table where the data is coming from is much more valuable. So getting the details is very important. And then likewise, having one optimization goal at a time to make sure that you can measure the outcome to see what's working and what isn't. We all know that looking at that photo, that's not a pipe. That's just a photo of a pipe. Revenue can kind of be the same way sometimes. People just understand that's not revenue, that's gross revenue, or whatever they may see through their own lenses. The reason why we need to expose or make the data elements transparent is because keeping the lights on is so important, or what we call KTLO. In my current role, I am working with a team where we are responsible for the business intelligence tools and services infrastructure. And a woman on my team named Cynthia uses this great analogy for a tricycle. So the reason why we use the tricycle analogy is because people may think that they're accessing a field in a database table, and they are. It is a field in a database table. However, there's a lot that goes into populating that field in the database table, say, for example, revenue. What we found out is that sometimes people may think that their revenue file is coming from a certain source, or any file really in that case. But that file may not exactly be all it's cracked up to be, or may not be fully automated to the point where the pipeline is delivering the data lightning fast on a bullet train the way the user may think. So that's where we use the tricycle analogy. We do our best to try and help people understand, as data stewards, we do our best to try and help people understand, is this really a data problem or an infrastructure? And keeping the lights on and having visibility into the underlying data pipelines is helpful for some, but not all. If I'm a very technical person, I may try and be interested in diving into those schemas or trying to understand how the data is flowing. Other people, they might not be interested in that. They may just want their answer. So keeping the lights on is very helpful. I saw Edward Tufte speak at the Art Center in Pasadena a couple of years back. And one of the things that I like about Edward Tufte, well, many things, but Edward Tufte had a line where he had mentioned that a baseball box score is a very beautiful data visualization. And I thought that was interesting because it's just a data table. For anybody who's seen a baseball box score, it's just a basic data table, 2 rows and a few columns. But if you have an understanding and context, then that data table can tell you everything you need to know. Cataloging data and inventorying data is a huge challenge with all the data that's being created and generated in the world today. Some of that data is much more valuable than others. Understanding the source of the data and the context of the data is what helps us understand if we are looking at a real data problem, and then also understanding how urgent or when does this decision need to be made. We do all of this so that we can avoid those data surprises and those service gotchas. For example, how many times, well, in my own personal experience, maybe you've had this too. Let's say that process runs, an automated process runs to deliver data at 9 a.m. Process completes, business user goes and looks at the data. However, there's no data. That means the process, while it completed, did not complete successfully. However, I've been in those conversations, and I'm sure you have too, where it's hard to say the automation failed because the automation worked, but maybe the timing or something else was off. From a business perspective, all we're looking for is the answer. We're trying to get to that number or that key metric. Here again, we talk about the optimization goal. It's very important to focus on one thing at a time. And also, when you're keeping the lights on, having more than one watchdog is very helpful. For example, it's quite possible to use a self-service BI tool itself to do some monitoring, but it's even better when you can have some additional monitoring tools outside of the tool itself confirm that what you're seeing from the tool is indeed the truth. Now we're going to move on to general solutions for specific problems. This was a term that I came across when I did an ERP transition for Carlson Companies. And I really started to understand more and more the importance of data ins and data outs. The intent of pulling together all of the company's data into one enterprise management tool is to help the enterprise get a global perspective. A lot of the times, that global perspective can mask or cover up what's happening underneath. But is that really important? The important thing is that, again, the business is able to deliver the product and really, let's say, drive value. Uh, and in that ERP, I'll say in that ERP learning, what I discovered was that there's a reality and a vision. The vision is what people think is going on. Those people from the global perspective that are maybe looking from the top down, and they're not exactly in the detail or in the weeds as much as they're trying to drive strategy and vision. So there's a reason as to why the business is going the direction it's going, but the reality is there's a whole lot of work under the surface that's taking place. And this circle on the left here, I believe, all starts with awareness up at the top. There's generally an awareness that the business has an opportunity to improve. From there, getting the accessibility so that people are understanding of what is in the data, what is in the business, how the business is looking at things. And then, of course, the designing, the developing, the testing, the deploying, and the maintaining, as we talked about before, that's an ongoing process. It's self-service BI and data governance is like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. It's happening constantly. And all of that is to help align with the vision of the business in order to measure those key metrics and those attributes. Next here is just a couple of, I'll call them communication triangles, or just ways that I think people really look at the business or what people are really asking for. So on the left here, you have the admin. This is the admin stack or the admin view of the business. What the administration or the business wants most is answers. After that, they may ask for recommendations, follow-up actions, and then maybe at the very end, they're going to want to know the technical details or the know-how to say, this is how we did it. This is how we accomplished what we did. That's not always, as a technical person, how technical people may look at things. A technical person may want to come and deliver the details, deliver some type of say, explanation as to how the solution was reached or the answer was derived. So that said, from a technology standpoint, whenever I'm interfacing between the business and self-service BI and technology, I always try and start with the business context before I go into the technical details. Understanding the why is just as important as the how. It should all end in insights from the IT or the self-service BI viewpoint, which will lead to answers for the business. We see the vision in the middle again here because this is a repetitive and iterative process. So what this is, again, is intended to be a nice, simple picture where you can color in sort of your own experiences and understandings to see how this may fit into your organization or your infrastructure. Because every company is a data company, and given that vision is our only language, keeping the lights on to see the data and to get a better, say, rapport between the business and the technology will ultimately drive business value in the end and help the business make money, which is really what the business is there to do, as well as give back. And overall, um, we're all data stewards. It's very important to keep this in mind as we work with data, and we also work with the people who interact with the business, both internal and external clients and customers, because everybody will have different needs. And I hope that today some of this helped maybe set a framework that you can take back, or at least work with your partners across multiple business units. So thank you very much for the chance here to speak. Appreciate your attendance and your time. I did leave some time at the end for questions. I believe we have about 10 minutes to go. So if there are any questions, please do ask or let me know.
Thanks, Jason. That was a great, insightful presentation. And we have some questions. Appreciate the questions from the attendees. And the first question is from Jason Gillespie. Great point about the source of data. How do you recommend tracking the source of data such that the data analyst can see that the source in or near the data table itself?
It's a good question. Thank you for asking it. I think that's where the documentation comes in. Tools like Confluence are very helpful, just from a, say, flat out OneNote style or Microsoft Word style of documentation. Anything to help the business understand where that data is coming from will be helpful. From a technology standpoint, trying to have something like a GitHub or something with a true code-based system where a business user who's savvy enough may want to go back and try and read through the code to understand, where did that data field really come from? Is this revenue field the summation of, say, chargebacks, refunds, and revenue, or is it exclusive of those values? So I hope that helped answer the question.
All right, thanks, Jason. And thanks, Jason Gillespie, for asking that question. The next question is by Mark. Hi, Jason. Thank you for speaking to us. Could you tell us how you got into business intelligence field and how do you best integrate the multitude of business intelligence tools out there, for example, Zoho?
Hey, Mark. Thanks for the question. I got into the business intelligence field almost by chance. So I started out as a POS sales technician for that coffee house. From there, I was able to transition into fortune cookies or chopsticks, working with a company that was eventually acquired, a sole proprietorship that was acquired by Carlson Companies. At that point in time, as it happens, I was moved from a traditional IT role into more of an accounting, finance, supply chain type role. Given that I came from IT and then started to use more spreadsheets and more ERP tools, it was a natural transition into BI for me. You're absolutely right. With all the BI tools out there, it can be overwhelming. I know for myself, especially over the last 5 years, it feels like I've been focused more on having what I'll call a data reader, which is something maybe like a Tableau or something like a Click. MicroStrategy is also another popular one. but some type of data reader or data visualization tool that sits on top of the stack to help people look at the data. In the middle of that stack, you have something that might be more like data preparation or data blending, something maybe like an UltraX or a Rapid Miner come to mind. And then underneath all of that is really where the true ETL work or the big heavy lifting is done with data pipelines, whether it's something like a traditional Microsoft stack like an SSIS. Today you see much more Python, many more Python ETLs, and likewise the cloud computing, right? The AWS, the GCP, the Azure, really multiple tools to do multiple jobs is what I think is sort of the current status of what works best. That said, having everything under one tool or one application would be great. And I think Salesforce making the acquisition of Tableau was definitely a step in that direction. I think you asked about Zoho, which is a similar CRM tool. I'm not as familiar with Zoho, but I have taken customer data from Zoho. Microsoft Dynamics is another one. And maybe this is just my generalization, but I always just try and get to the source, try and get to the underlying data or the fields, because under the hood, there's going to be a relational database somewhere that's connecting things behind the scenes. And as we just talked about, whether there's a code repository or even just a basic Word document to help people understand, those are the things that really give insights, in my opinion. Hopefully that helped answer the question, Mark.
Great. Thanks, Jason. And I believe we don't have any more questions, but please reach out to the speaker if you have any further questions on this topic. Thanks again for joining today's presentation, and I hope you gained some new information and insights. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for being part of this year's DataCon LA 2020. Thanks again, Jason. Great presentation. Bye for now.
Bye.
This session has ended.